Welcome to the Abrams Dicta YouTube channel. Subscribe today and join me, David Abrams, as I explore the world on my Italian scooter and talk about life, law, art, and any other subject that catches my interest. Also, please check out my blog at abramsdicta.com. Although I'm a licensed attorney, nothing here should be taken as legal advice or counsel. If you're looking to contact me professionally, please go to my website, www.dhabramslaw.com.
So we're on a little ride here. It's in the evening, and I need to run up to the synagogue, where I'm a synagogue president. I just became president, I don't know, 3 months ago, and one of my jobs there is to make sure the bulletin gets out, and we've got some issues right now with printing the bulletin, so I'm going to go up and see if I can figure out what's going on with the printer. So it's the glamour of the job, right? But it gives me a great excuse to take a nice little evening ride on my scooter. Ride through some of the lovely Tallahassee neighborhoods. So it's a pretty night. Couldn't ask for a nicer night. It's a little cool out. You know, the traffic isn't bad. Go up and see what's going on. This is one of my favorite little roads. There's some beautiful big houses here, and I like the trees and stuff. I'm guessing that the people that live here make a whole lot more money than I do. It is pretty. If you look at these canopy road trees, I think these are live oak trees. This is really what Tallahassee is known for, these live oaks and the canopy roads. You know, kind of this subtle, quiet southern charm. It's a lovely little southern city. Unfortunately, we're kind of off the beaten path, so we don't get as many visitors here as come to most of the rest of the state of Florida. Right? You don't really get hardly anybody coming through here. My wife and I, about 10-15 years ago, we lived down in Orlando, and we lived there for about 5 years, and I think just about everybody we know made it to Orlando during that 5 years that we were there. And we've been up here for about 15 years now, and you know, nobody comes to visit you in Tallahassee. There's nothing, unless they're coming specifically to visit you. There's very little that seems to draw people from, at least from out of state, to come visit. People within the state, they sometimes will come up because they've got business with state government. But that's okay. That gives us an excuse to go visit people and to get out of town every once in a while, which is nice. We both enjoy traveling, and we enjoy visiting folks, and we take a couple long car drives every year. It's one of our favorite things to do. But there's really this kind of yin and yang to life in Tallahassee, and that I know a lot of us would really like to see more economic growth and opportunity here. Something beyond state government jobs, which tend to be fairly low paying. Florida pays its civil servants, at the lowest rates in the nation. We're remarkably low here, and so it'd be nice to have better opportunities economically for people with jobs and things like that. But yet we also really like the natural environment that we have here, and and I don't think people in Tallahassee are too keen on getting bringing factories in, as if you could bring factories anywhere anymore. But there's some neat things going on with the tech industries and the DAMI industry program, which is down at Railroad Square, which is kind of this this program that helps businesses, helps new tech companies get a start. It's kind of an incubator, I think, is what they call it, and it's an interesting project, and we're hearing more and more about it, and I hope that in the future that'll really bring some great tech businesses to Tallahassee, because we really have great talent here. We have Florida State and Florida A&M, two major universities here. We have the engineering school, which is a joint project between the two universities, and there's a lot going on here. You've got a lot of smart people with great educations, and a lot of folks who want to stay here. This is a nice town to raise your children in. Heck, even if you're like me, you're not raising kids, it's not a bad place to live. And it's one of the things that I like the most about Tallahassee is that it's people, when they settle down here, they stay here. There are folks that I've known here since I was a college student. So you're going back 30 years for some of these folks. And how many other places can you live where you get to get to know people for 30 years and watch them get married and have their kids, and really kind of grow older together? That's a nice thing. And I don't think it happens as much in the rest of Florida. Florida tends to be a very transient state, and Tallahassee is a little different. It's not. We're really not a retirement destination like a lot of the rest of the state is. We're not on the water, so we don't really have the waterfront views. Although we've got great lakes, and we've got some beautiful saltwater marsh areas to the south. Maybe we'll take a scooter ride down there one of these days, and I'll catch some of that on film, and we can explore that. But a lot of the things that people think of as typically Florida, we don't have it here. And as you see, you're not seeing a lot of palm trees. Let's see what this guy's going to do. All right. You always got to be watching these cars pulling out, because they might not see you, and they pull right out in front of you, and that'll ruin your day. That's I'm not a real gutsy rider. I don't tend to avoid places where there's a lot of hazards, and I don't like heavy, high moving traffic. My scooter will go plenty fast. I just prefer it kind of tooling along like this is actually where I'm happiest. And I like to look around as I'm going. There's McClay Gardens is a gorgeous garden in an old house there. So some of the Tallahassee history. There's a lake back in there. And they made it into a park. And then we're about to cross Thomasville Road here and go into a neighborhood called Killearn, which was is a housing development. I guess they're still building in some areas of it, but really predominantly was built out in the 1970s, maybe some in the 80s. When I first came to town, this was really getting to the northern part of town. The Thomasville Road goes up miles to the north now, but back in the old days, it the town really kind of ended with Killearn, and this was the area that everybody kind of wanted to be in. I remember, you don't hear the term anymore, but when I first came to town, you'd hear people talk about Killearn curtains, which were basically a set of sheets hung over the windows, and that was because they couldn't afford curtains because their house payments were so high. It's not the high dollar area that it once was, though. It's still a desirable neighborhood. I've never lived up here, but it always seems like it's a nice place. Not too much crime up here. There's occasionally I think there was a drug-related shooting up here about a year ago, and probably the big news, and it's been about 10 years ago, up in this neighborhood, and I don't know where in the neighborhood it happened, but there were women that were being held prisoner in a house up here. It was a human trafficking case, and they escaped. They escaped from the people that were holding them captive. They were in the sex trade. They were basically being forced into prostitution, and whoever was doing it had a house up here, and they kept them prisoner in this house. Well, they escaped and they ran to one of the neighbors. But the way I understand the story is that the women, they only spoke Spanish, and so fortunately the house that they ran to, the one of the kids that lived in the house was taking Spanish in his high school, I guess. I don't know, in school somewhere, wherever he was in school, he was taking Spanish, and he was able to talk with them and then get them on the phone with his Spanish teacher. And from there it led to law enforcement and the FBI, and it was one of the biggest human trafficking prosecutions that's happened in the last 20 years. It was a big deal that stretched over multiple states, and it started right here in this little neighborhood here. People forget that Florida is really ground zero for human trafficking in the United States. It's a big problem, not just in Florida, but we seem to have more than our fair share of it. And a lot of it is centered around the agricultural industry here in the state of Florida. We have a lot of migrant agricultural workers, and I think a lot of it kind of flies underneath the radar, so that it's easier for these guys to operate. And there's also been some involvement in the hotel industry here in Florida. So you want to keep your eyes open and alert for that, because that's a serious crime that really does hurt people. Most of the time, if you hear me talking about crime and criminal law and prosecution, you'll hear me being very critical of the state and of the government. But this is one area where I think they really could step up enforcement and protect people. The folks that study this issue say that there's more people today living in slavery than ever in human history, and that's pretty shocking to me. So it's really something that we should all be thinking about, and making sure that we do businesses with companies that promote fair trade policies, things like that. It's important. But we're up in the Killearn neighborhood here, and we're deep into it at this point. They've had, I guess there's been some disputes up here, because when they built the housing development, a lot of these houses, like the ones off to the right here, they're built on golf course fairways, but the developer kept the ownership of the golf course, and now there's so many golf courses in Florida. That was kind of the hook to get people to buy into a lot of these developments, is they'd always put golf courses, and that would satisfy the environmental concerns, because somehow, and I don't understand it, but a golf course is green, it's a green place, and it would increase the property values that they were selling to the people. But there's nothing that requires the developer, I guess, to continue to operate the golf course. So the developer up here wanted to shut down part of the golf course, and of course the neighbors, or the people that bought along the fairways, they're upset because that can impact their homeowners' values. And I don't know if the developer is planning on building in those areas or not. I don't know what may or may not stop them from doing it. But it certainly is. It's an issue that is coming up in the law in the United States. Is what do you do when somebody gets you to buy into a housing development with the idea that you're going to be on a lake or a golf course or have some other amenity, and then 30 years later or 20 years later they decide that it's really not cost effective for us to continue to do this. There's too many golf courses, or it costs money to maintain the lake, and so we're just going to let this thing go. And I know of a neighborhood up in Ohio where they had a lake, and the developer owned the lake, and the dam excuse me, the dam that they used to create the lake started falling apart, and the developer refused to fix it, and they lost their lake. The lake went away. Now they kind of got this big swampy area where their lake used to be, and I can't imagine that's real good for people's property values. So you got to think about those things when you're buying into places, because they will swindle you, man. They'll swindle you all day long. All right, well, I'm at my destination, so I'm gonna hop off the scooter here and go see what I can figure out, and I'll see you guys on the next ride.